Hello there, welcome to a Second Thoughts overview of Orion of the Wood Elves. I played through the initial turns and got a real feel for the faction, its strengths and weaknesses. I'll talk about those in this video and give you some army compositions later on. Like always, this is not an in-depth guide, but will give you a lot of information to play the faction. So let's play with Orion of the Wood Elves. So for our short victory condition, we're required to perform the Ritual of Rebirth in Aethelloran. We also need to occupy Loot Razor sack 30 different settlements. Now, more a little bit on the Ritual of Rebirth when I go through the mechanics, but in essence it will take some time before we can do this. So it's still pretty lengthy, as we'll see later. Achieving this, of course, you'll get the reward, which is +3 hero capacity. It helps that you can have heroes early to mid-game without spending too much in the buildings to have the hero capacity. Now, in terms of the long victory condition, it's quite lengthy. Occupy Loot Razor sack 70 different settlements. Win the Defense of the Oak battle. It will spawn after, you know, the Ritual of Rebirth, basically. And then to perform 8 rituals of the World Roots Healing, which is all over the world. It will take a lot of time. Achieving this +10 hero recruit rank, it's always nice to ensure that your heroes are more powerful right off the gate if you wish to pursue domination or other types of victories. In terms of Orion, he's the God King of Aethelloran. He enables the unique Wild Hunt event, more on this in a moment. And reduced upkeep cost for every for your army for each active war, and -4% for all other armies, which means that if you have 25 enemies, it's free. So it encourages you to have multiple wars at the same time, just to benefit from that reduced upkeep. Now, in terms of campaign movement range, it's +50% in World Roots stance, which is great. It allows you some tactical options there as well. Speaking of the hunt, whenever it is ongoing, you benefit from stronger bonuses from the offices, more on that on the mechanics, less cooldown for the deep roots teleportation, some speed and melee attack and charge bonus for your faction leader, which is great, and campaign movement range after raising a settlement, all characters. It's actually excellent the longer this is ongoing. Now, climates. Everything is suitable. It's excellent, if only overshadowed by the fact that you barely have anything to do outside of the forests and the surrounding lands. So owning the specific locations or everything may not be in your best interest. But still, you can conquer the whole map without any issues concerning whatsoever concerning the climate, which is excellent. In terms of the starting location, it may seem awful at first, like you're right in the middle of some enemies, but it is actually one of the most defensible locations in the world. The attrition of Aethelloran alone is enough to prevent many enemies from even becoming a menace. It will be very difficult for anyone to invade this without suffering so much attrition that even your garrison or just a small army will assist in destroying them. Typical expansion routes are different. It all depends on where you wish to fast travel, basically. It is also the reason why their campaign feels so unique. More on this on the mechanics later. You can always capture settlements outside of the world routes, outside of the forest areas, basically, such as this one. It's completely outside. But they'll be less productive, so it's not in your best interest typically, but you can do that, of course. You can. There's no reason why not, actually, but it's just less productive. It's much more productive to conquer anything that has this little symbol right there that you'll see. Now, friends and foes will be influenced of how you proceed on the campaign map, as you'll see in the mechanics and the diplomacy sections of this guide. But just a note on that, it's because you can always have diplomatic relations as you improve on the forest healths, which, you know, it completely changes who becomes your enemy and who becomes your foe. So in terms of diplomacy, you're more part of the Order factions, but you'll also have to fight against them. They're sort of their own alliance, let's say. Wood Elves, they're alone. They can be hated by everyone else, so be wary of that. But for the most part, consider yourself an Order faction and try to improve relations with them. Specifically, for instance, with the Empire and the Dwarves, it may provide you with some good outposts, such as having some good cavalry from the Empire, some good artillery pieces, and some more artillery from the dwarves, it will be excellent to support your troops. So go for it. So speaking of mechanics, first and most importantly, the trees. Everything is based around these magical forests. There are several ones in the world. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And basically, you'll need to pacify or to clean the forests around you by controlling the settlements that have that symbol over there, such as this one, for instance. This will help the forest heal up, and once you arrive to the 500 forest health, they'll be able to do the ritual of rebirth. That will unlock basically that, you know, there's going to be some enemies attacking the region, you defend it, and then you have additional rewards from performing that ritual. Basically, that's how it works. Now, because they all have different buffs, as you can see here, for instance, diplomatic relations with Bretonia, growth for all provinces. But if you go here, then it is global recruitment capacity and diplomatic relations with high elves. This ensures that you can have so many different campaigns. It's such a good one for replay value because you can just go anywhere that you choose. Maybe I wish to go into Cathay and just get some Cathay improvements. Maybe I just like to have some Ogre Kingdoms help, or Winds of Magic. It's up to you what you wish to do. Maybe this one for unit experience. Who cares? I'll just go anywhere that I wish, and that will change the campaign. This is one of the best things about them. It does imply being at war with multiple foes, and sometimes in multiple fronts, so be wary of that. Now, the world routes, or the deep routes, allow you to teleport between different forests. So for instance, if you have an army near the Oak of Ages, you can teleport to anywhere that you wish with a cooldown, so be wary of that. For instance, you can see that with the Hunt Slumbers, I cannot do it now, but Orion does have a nice buff to the cooldown of deep roots, so you know, with Orion specifically you can teleport more easily. Now, Ember. It's a unique currency. It's very easy. Once you heal up a forest, you'll receive 1 ember, and then you can use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for the different research texts that require it. These are all very powerful, as you can see there. More on that later, but still, choose wisely which ones you wish, and that's up to it. Now, offices. They provide mostly specific army buffs or lord buffs, which allows you to have some interesting different army compositions later on. So, for instance, I have this one here. Of course, I'll put some Eternal Guard and Glade Guard units with him, just to ensure that I benefit from those bonuses, really. Now, you're also one of the few factions that can benefit from building the Sword of Cain, the Shrine of Cain, and construct the Shrine of the Widowmaker to unlock the Sword of Cain. That's what I meant. It is a very interesting campaign when you decide to do it, and you go against everyone. Finally, Ariel is a specific legendary hero that you can obtain that is a beast of a caster. Similar to Lord Kroag, you will just put her in any army and she'll be crazy good for you. Lots of important abilities, lots of interesting stuff that will allow her to overcome most difficulties that we'll find. She has an interesting set of skills as well, of spells. So yep, definitely one of the good mechanics as well to end up here with the Wood Elves. As for Province Edicts, you do not have Province Edicts. You already have quite good bonuses really with the trees and the rituals of rebirth, so basically you can't have edicts, I guess. You can consider the minor settlement sort of edict, kinda, but more on that later once you check the buildings. Now, in terms of army stances, we do have the world routes. It's similar to underground, similar to beast paths, but you benefit from Orion, giving it more range. Encamp and raid provide mostly of the same, and they cost 50%, move range, so you can only engage in this if you still have half your movement points. But ambush only requires 10%, which is excellent to have some sneaky activity during the campaign. Speaking of buildings, outside of the trees you have almost nothing. Some buildings that help you around the provinces, just 2 units that you can recruit, the Glade Guards and the Dryads, and it's mostly for good for fast growth. Of course you have some resource buildings that you may want, some extra income always helps, and some specific ones, but yeah, basically that's how it works. So, you can have a growth and casualty replenishment rate in the region. You can also have another growth and recruitment cost and global recruitment duration for armies in the region. Then you have some control income, corruption, and some growth and construction costs, but nothing too out of the ordinary really. Of course, maybe around the adjacent provinces this will help, but outside of anything nearby the trees, you may have to, may not have any good use for it. Now, your settlements have no walls, basically, so they do have a lot of building slots, so that's cool. You need 6 with the cast of building, need 5 military buildings, and they're all fairly easy to build in one province. You also need an armory, however, for some specific units, such as the Blade Singers and Wild Riders with shields, as well as some others that you'll see there with the with the black border in the unit card. Now, all your provinces will be very powerful, very expensive, but very profitable, true. Now, in terms of the infrastructure, you have a income, growth, and casualty replenishment building, lots of income building with some trade stuff, and an income and some more trade, and some control, and some growth to all provinces. Note that. Overall, good choices, which they have to be powerful because you can hardly build these, only a few settlements you can actually build, all those that are in the trees, which are not that many. Now, research is really good. It gives good campaign generalized buffs overall, some income from raising settlements, some cooldown for Lord of Beast spells, as you can see there, and also some interesting unit buffs. In particularly the ones that require the Ember are really powerful. Construction time minus 25% for all buildings, excellent. Casualty replenishment rate in foreign territory, excellent, really cool. Growth, recruitment duration minus 1 turn. So they're really powerful, and it gives you a lot of thought in terms of which ones you'll want to have before. As always, we have Lord-specific skills. Then we have the yellow line, or casting, basically. Rather different here for Orion, as he has like a secondary sort of line here. And then we have the red line, or army buffs, and the blue line, or specifically the campaign buffs. Starting with the blue line, very interesting here for the ambush success chance. You also have missile strength, which is excellent, really cool. You do have a crazy replenishment rate of plus 15%. Unlike other factions, this seems to be overlooked, as it was changed from Warhammer 2, it was toned down. But take this opportunity. You still have upkeep reduction, but considering Orion's faction mechanics, it may prove to be less useful in this context, as in you'll have less upkeep regardless everywhere. Red line appears to be mostly based around the idea of elves or trees, really. So, however, good combos between both exist. Most lords will buff elves, with the ancient tree lords actually giving some buffs to tree armies. Now, you have 4 heroes, basically. Let me show you those. 4 heroes, between the Glade Captain, the Waste Stalker, which also provides some base missile damage for your units in your army. You also have the Branch Wraith, which replenishes troops, helps with the replenishment as well if you need that. And you also have the spell Singers with different magic lores. All of them really useful, really cool, and should provide you with some interesting armies and army compositions and ideas. So here are the red line skills for the Wood Elves. Some keynotes are that all missile units, for instance, are all here in one, and the division between, cheap infantry, elite infantry, and also between the treemen and the treekins. So it's not the best in terms of effectiveness. You'll see later on. Now, Orion gives bonuses to cavalry units, to missile units, basically. Not too much, but significant sometimes. So plenty of different combinations are possible. Some based with heavy infantry, with some missile troops, and some cavalry, or with some focusing more on the missile side of things. But notice how, expensive they are. However, he can also have a crazy good army just focused on cavalry and rush army, which is also an interesting possibility for you if you wish. Ariel, he gets the Guardian ability when Ariel is with him, but in all honesty, Ariel herself can deal with so much. So having both the strongest lord that you may have and the strongest hero there seems too much. Seems over what you needed. So having her alone in a different army with just some basic combinations, she'll do great, and you'll certainly have a great army just focused solely on protecting her, for instance. Now, the Ancient Treemen, they have bonuses for Treekin, so of course it makes sense to have some armies around that. Notice the average expenditure in terms of redline skills. Of course, some with 3 Ancient Treemen. These are great single entities. Some Force Dragons there, some Missile Troops. Always Weight Stalkers, of course. You can choose any other Missile Troops, but it's just for a generalized idea, of course. Now, in terms of other types of armies, of course, you can have some build-up. So you can have some cavalry-based units with some missiles, just some dryads to soak. For Vanguard, for instance, I believe all of these are Vanguard deployable, so that's why I set it up. You can have just a basic sweeper army composed with some initial infantry with some elite troops as well. Or you can have just a mix between elves and trees. Notice how ineffective those are in terms of the redline skills, but always interesting possibilities for you guys in your playthroughs. In terms of the final notes, it's one of the most interesting campaigns for certain. You do not get an empire in the same sense as of the factions. Maybe you'll build up smaller empire here, and then you'll conquer somewhere here, and you conquer here, or maybe you'll go there, or maybe you want to go here. It's up to you. So fighting in different places at the same time may give this campaign a huge replay value overall. For Orion specifically, you can get amazing low or even non-existent upkeep because of his abilities. So try it out, see what happens. Maybe you can get unlimited armies, really. Now, speaking of armies, your army consists mostly of good infantry, great missiles, good cavalry, good monstrous infantry and single entities, decent flyers. It lacks artillery and may be slightly micro-intensive. Most of the obstacles you'll find, you'll have to focus fire, have to be careful. They have somewhat squishy cavalry, so yeah, it will be more micro-intensive for sure than certain armies. Replenishment is good, plus the climate really helps in that regard. I believe it is time now to follow then into the wild hunt with Orion.